I'm Chris Verdugo, the Executive Director of the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus, and I am joined by Dr. Tim Seelig, Artistic Director, and our Director of our film Gay Chorus Deep South, and our producer Bud Johnston, and Director David Charles. And we are thrilled to have you with us on Behind the Curtain. And for those of you who don't know what Behind the Curtain is or why it exists, I'm going to let you know really quickly. Earlier this year, we launched our programming at the country's first LGBTQ Center for the Arts in the Mission, our new home of the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus. And after a couple of events in February, we shut the Arts Center down because of COVID. And so we took this idea of interviewing our friends in this behind the curtain sort of context, and we moved it online, and we've had great success, and it's been so much fun, and we are grateful to Kristen Chenoweth and Billy Porter and so many others who have joined. So if you haven't seen their videos, I highly suggest you keep watching, keep moving down the list, and you're going to have a great time. But today we're here to talk to David and Bud and Tim about this little documentary that we did called Gay Chorus Deep South. Well, they did it. We were just in it. And who knew that it would go on to premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival last year and win the Audience Award and win. So Tim and I had no idea that that this is what David and Bud would create for the chorus, for the Oakland Interfaith Gospel Choir, and for the world. It's such a beautiful gift, and we're thrilled that this Sunday, June 7th, there is the opportunity to watch Gay Chorus Deep South wherever you are in the world, which is a massive, it's just a massive treat, and we could all use a little love and inspiration with the documentary. So, hi guys.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi. It's going. I mean, I've always been a born-again Christian Dior queen, so thank you for...
And just to be clear, the born-again Christian Dior is David Charles Rodrigues.
Yes.
And
yes.
The bro is Ben.
The bro who sent me an anonymous email 3 years ago saying, hey, I'm over at Airbnb. I want to talk to you about a documentary. And then, who is this guy who got my personal email?
I'm resourceful like that. Yeah.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Hard to believe it was 3 years ago. I mean, that is it's been an unbelievable journey since that day when I cold emailed you.
Yeah. So how did the gays get with the Airbnbs, with the David Charles Rodrigues? How did that all happen?
Man, it's been so long, but we have told this story quite a few times about kind of how everything came to be. It's kind of ironic that we're in another election year, but the time when we were putting this together was also an election year, and also an incredibly important election year. David and I had been collaborating on some different creative projects, video projects, and things that we wanted to put together. And as we were developing different ideas, David actually came across an article that had been put out about the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus going on a Red State tour. And David kind of quickly brought that to me, and we started thinking about what that all meant. And it was kind of a very quick, we kind of became obsessed with what you guys were doing. And we thought that it just was an amazing story that was definitely worth investigating more about. And if we could actually be a part of documenting that and telling the story. We were working on that within the walls of Airbnb, and had pitched it to Jonathan, and he gave us the green light to move forward and reach out to you and see if this could actually be something worth doing. And that's when I scoured the web for Chris Verdugo's personal email and found that pretty easily, by the way.
Easy.
He's easy.
You found it easily. No one else can. # single. But go on.
And we essentially, I reached out and said, hey, we would love to talk to you. We think what you guys are doing is incredible, and we're really inspired by the actions that you guys were putting in place to, instead of touring an international tour, in reaction to the kind of division in the country, taking your music and the message and everything that you guys have built up throughout the 40 years of your existence and doing it right here where it was needed most, and specifically in the South, in the states that have the most discriminatory laws against LGBTQ. And from there, I think it's probably more appropriate for David to kind of take over and maybe tell a little bit about how it evolved into, starting production.
I really thought what you guys, the initiative that you guys took to do this tour was so profound, is because it was tackling the one thing that, I personally thought was the main issue of the 2016 elections, which was the rise of the divisiveness, right? And now we're kind of seeing it at its height right now. Well, hopefully at its height, but, I fear that it can go even further. The way it was done and the way we all worked together felt new and just felt maybe refreshing and a very positive way of protesting, and as the protests go on right now, I keep going back a lot to the tour and to the way we were able to sit down and listen to the opposition and to create, some sort of conversation and to use your guys' beautiful and powerful music to create some sort of change in people's hearts and people's minds, and, bringing that music into churches, which is very profound, especially in the South.
You directed and created a very hopeful film, right? This film, audiences walk out of the theater and they are inspired. They feel hopeful that there is possibility. And you could have gone down various different routes. And we saw a cut or two that were very different. And so, I'd love for you to share with people why it was that you chose that particular route, like why you went down this particular avenue with the film.
Sure. I think one of the main reasons is that, unfortunately, at the time it was 2019, or even now in 2020, even more so, being hopeful is being radical. I feel like radical thinking is around positive thinkers and people who know that change can happen. So that was one reason. But I feel like the true core reason was the experience was very positive. I always like to say that, and this is just a made up math, but, 90% of the tour were these, moments of surprise and delight and of togetherness, and 10% were the aggression that we already expected, and unfortunately, what the media does, and even on social media, we get those 10% of negativity, and we turn that into 100% of what we're viewing, right? So our image is distorted.
How did this, Chris mentioned the fact that we were completely blown away. From your side, from Airbnb as the sponsor of this film, how did that feel for them?
Well, I think I would say the expectation from Airbnb was not very high. I think that our expectation was that we wanted to do something that we had never done before, that was surprising, not only for a company like Airbnb to do, but just a surprising story to come out of a group of individuals that quite frankly had never done a feature-length documentary. I think the passion that we had, the friendships that we made with you, and the I think the promises we made to ourselves and to you and to our team about what we were setting out to do was really, that's where the expectations were.
I'll never forget the look on your face when we were meeting it. And it was like toward the end of the conversation, it was literally like and by the way, we're doing this a year earlier.
There were many moments of, anxiety and stress. But I also think at the same time, the fact that the tour was happening, It was going to be 9 days on the road, and that was where we had to do the work, really. I mean, there was a lot of work that went, in post and all the other stuff, but the real core moment was those 9 days in October of 2017, and we had to make it happen. And I think that pressure and that kind of constrained time limit, and it really actually helped us in the long run to make sure that we were very focused, like laser focused on what we needed to capture. And so I think that helped with David and how he was thinking about the music and how the music translated to themes that we wanted to get across in the film, and making sure that we knew what scene or what songs we wanted to shoot at each concert, which we can get into that later, some of the drama of production. But, that focus and those kind of time constraints may have actually helped. I think it helped us tremendously to really focus.
The question was always, how many hours of film did you shoot? And those are obviously from documentary people or filmmakers. And you all shot about 300 hours of film that was then cut into a 90-minute documentary-ish. So I'm going to ask each person, and I'll go first. I know, so it gives you a moment to think. We've, of course, lived through most of those 300 hours, but what's your favorite part of the documentary? Oh. And I know you're just like children, every scene, but here's my favorite part. For the moment, and changes all the time. We're standing in the chorus office, and some man down in God knows where, Alabama, Mississippi, had gotten our phone number and kept calling and leaving just vile messages about you pervert, you sodomites, there's not equal rights, and just was going off. And we were all standing around listening to that, and he hung up, and Chris said, "There's no amount of music that's going to help that." Like, yes. That was that's kind of what you said, right?
Oh, yeah. I said, there's no amount of singing that's going to fix that. I either hung up the phone before or after, but it was just one of those moments. It truly came out of me. And I think, when you make the film, it's like that 10% that you were talking about, right, David? Like, there's a group of people that you're never going to move, you're never going to change. They're rooted in that, and so I think it kind of sets the tone for that's not where we're going. We're not going to try to move those people. We're going to have these other conversations.
That's easy. The Irish blessing scene is my favorite moment for many, many reasons. But, in one scene I've never seen, and it's not because it's our film, but in a documentary, that the true demonstration of humanity that I've seen in that moment, and just to, give the viewers kind of a little bit of context. You guys do this beautiful thing backstage before the performances, where you gather together the friends and family of the chorus singers, and that particular one was in Charlotte, North Carolina, and there were a lot of people that turned out. There were, I don't know, almost 1,000 people there, right? If you put the choruses together and then the friends and the family, and they were all with their families there. That some they hadn't seen in years. Some they were still overcoming trauma and rejection, and and you were had just come from a profound moment, thinking of your own family, and you kind of invite your mother, who has passed, to that moment. And for me, I lost my mother when I was very young, so I always invite her to that moment as well. And I've probably seen the film maybe over 60 times now, and I still cry every single time that scene happens.
Likewise, I have there's so many moments that mean something to me. And, but I think as I was thinking about this question, one thing that I really appreciate about documentary filmmaking and the process of what we all did together was kind of those serendipitous moments that you can't plan for, and you would have never been able to plan for anything like that. And one of those moments was right after one of the concerts, I believe, I don't remember where it was, but there was a meeting between Julian and his friend that he met on Facebook. That was not a planned scene, but what came out of that was, this meeting between two people that didn't really know each other that well. And Julian's friend had gifted Julian a quilt and read a poem to him. And it was just such a heartfelt moment that was captured beautifully, and was just one of those spur of the moment things that happened on tour. And there's a lot of those things that happened. But the fact that it came together and it made it into the cut, and it's one of those kind of tear-jerking moments that really is a very powerful message that kind of encapsulates the broader message of the film.
So I'm not going to try to pick another favorite moment, because that is my favorite moment as well. The words that Belinda says to him, as she's reading, she wrote this poem and she's reading it to him, and it's about the quilt and how, what the quilt represents, what the fish represents, what the patterns represent, and how she wants the quilt to envelop him, and in the same way that people have enveloped us, throughout the journey of the South. And then she goes on to speak about the world that she dreams of.
It's beautiful.
And especially right now. So.
We'll just pause for
Oh my gosh. If you're watching this video and you haven't seen the film, you need to watch this documentary at OUTStream on Sunday. Let me just say that. And the world that I dream of is the world that Belinda describes, and that's why it resonates with me. A world where we see each other as equal, and there is no injustice. Because how can there be injustice if we see each other as equals, right? There's the respect and the love that comes with knowing that, looking at any human being, no matter their color, no matter their sexual orientation, no matter their socioeconomic status, we're all born the same way, we all die the same way, and we get to have this one life experience, and we should all have it in a way that empowers us to love ourselves and love one another. Tim asked Terrence Kelly in another Behind the Curtain earlier this morning about, is this the tipping point? And I said, is it the tipping point, or do we have to make it the tipping point? Like, what's it going to take? And, we look at the looting, and we look at the anger, and we look at the hurt. I mean, that's all hurt. That's hurt that's been bubbling up for decades and hundreds of years. And if we don't take this moment and let it be the tipping moment, it will be worse.
Thank you, Chris. That was beautiful. So, Bud, what's the documentary going to do now?
It's going to be streaming on OUTStream on Sunday. And I encourage everyone to take a look at that. We are, the film was picked up by MTV Documentary Films, and we've been working with them the last, 6 months or so. First was very focused on awards and kind of getting the film kind of the outreach that was needed for a lot of the awards season. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and there's been a lot of chaos surrounding, what's happening with regard to the broader distribution. But we are still working with MTV, and we're very hopeful that it will be out, this year, at some point this year, as a kind of more broadly distributed on one or many of the channels owned by Viacom. So we will definitely keep everyone updated as soon as we hear anything.
The thing I would say to people that are watching this is make sure and check your local or regional film festivals, because they've all gone virtual. And so if a film festival has Gay Chorus Deep South on its list, it will be streamed.
Now, we were pushing really hard for it to be released this month, because it's Pride Month, and I understand the pain of not being able to celebrate in the streets and to bring that love together. And I feel like that's one thing that our film does very powerfully, is that it brings that love together, and I feel like we're at a time right now. And this thinking comes before, the protests and everything that we're going through right now. So now more than ever, I feel like we need role models, and we need to see things and to see people practicing unconditional love and sharing that love in the form of protests. And that's what you guys do so beautifully, not just in the film, but, every day with the organization that you have.
Thank you, David. And, David, just to close, there was someone who was at the premiere, someone that was at the premiere of Gay Chorus Deep South in Tribeca, someone that you befriended, who just recently passed away and who really was revolutionary in the LGBTQ movement, and that is Larry Kramer.
Larry and his husband David became close friends of mine a little bit before the film, before Tribeca. So earlier that year, earlier last year, I guess, earlier in 2019. And every time I would go to New York, I would, either have breakfast or dinner at their home and just talk to them. And, and it was a big deal for, Larry was very sick at the time, was already very sick at the time and had just broken his hip. And, he was he came, as the fighter he is. And I love that, he would always tell me after that, he loved the film, but he thought it was too soft, that we needed to hit harder.
Of course he did.
And then we would laugh. But he was really our fairy godmother in a way, because he was the one that right after the premiere, the first thing he did, and just to show his level of commitment to the community and to, perpetuating the message, he called his dear friend Sheila Nevins, who was the former head of documentaries of HBO and who had just started MTV documentary films, and said, Sheila, you have to see this film. And that's how our film got to MTV. So it was really thanks to Larry that our film got to Sheila's hands, and I'll be forever grateful for him and for David as well. David's, just as much, he's kind of behind the scenes in Larry's life, but he's just as powerful and just as strong of an activist that Larry was. I don't even know if you guys know this, but the night before, or a few days before the premiere, they threw a dinner at his house, and they invited me, and it was all these, I don't know, older, ACT UP era people that were, the ones that survived and are still a strong community, and we're all like, they're all like telling stories, and it was a really surreal moment. And then, his husband kind of rolls this giant joint, and, we all start smoking this joint, and it was one of the best weed I've ever smoked in my entire life. And when I left, I thanked them for dinner, but I was very passionate about that weed. And then fast forward to the premiere, we had this big premiere at Tribeca and a red carpet, and, all these celebrities from the Queer Eye guys to Lance Bass to, Neil Patrick Harris came out. And, and then they asked me to kind of, accompany Larry for some picture ops and roll him in his wheelchair. And then he kind of was like, David. And then he snuck me this little doggy bag, with a few joints, so I could have for the post premiere stress. And I actually have the bag and one of them, and I framed it. So that's one of my favorite kind of pieces from that time.
And I believe we smoked the other one, right? Later that night, David?
We could never thank you for the gifts of yourself that you gave. You gave your lives for 2 years to make this film a reality. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys.
Bud.
Thank you.
And I wanted to thank you guys too for keeping the chorus alive and keeping your voices active, even during this time. I know how hard it is for you guys, and I try to support as much as I can, and I hope everyone who's watching this can support you guys as much as they can as well.
Thank you.